Hi, today I'm talking about net zero. Net zero? Net zero what? Why does this word get thrown around so much every time climate change comes up? Is it science? Is it politics? Is it technology? My name is Anubha Bhonsle and I'm breaking down this very important concept on the Climate Explainers today. It's a simple scientific concept, though it rarely gets talked about like that. Let me try and make an attempt. Imagine a scale. On one side, we have the greenhouse gases we release, and on the other side, we have greenhouse gases we take out. Now, we have to balance the amount of greenhouse gases we release into the atmosphere with the amount we remove from it. The scale has to stay balanced so that too many gases don't cause global warming. Now, scientists have studied this and set a limit for how much the Earth can warm without causing severe problems. And that limit is 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need to keep the warming under it. They have found that we can release around 260 gigatons of CO2 if we want to control global warming. But here's the catch. Currently, the world is emitting around 40 gigatons of CO2 every year. So if we continue at this rate, we're going to use up all our carbon budget in just over 6 years and go beyond the 1.5 degrees warming limit. That's why scientists say all countries need to achieve net zero. Now remember, they can do this by two ways. One, reduce the usage of fossil fuel like coal, oil and gas for energy, which release a lot of greenhouse gases. And number two, they can find ways to remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. One way of doing that is using nature's help. For example, planting forests that can absorb CO2 and store it. Now, another way is new technology to capture CO2 emissions and store them underground where they can't contribute to global warming. So how are countries planning to achieve net zero? 2015 is an important date to think about. Many countries, including India, signed an agreement called the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Countries actually came up with their own targets for when they want to achieve net zero, that is, balance their greenhouse gas emissions with their greenhouse gas removals. This includes the US. It is the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter and it has set a target for 2050. China and Russia, the world's first and fifth largest CO2 emitters, have set a target for 2060. Oil haven Saudi Arabia says it will try for net zero by 2060. India, the fourth largest greenhouse gas emitter, has set a target of 2070. A note here, these are long-term pledges and they are not legally binding. So, net zero is not in that sense immediate climate action. And here's where a very important part of the net zero discourse comes into play. Global North versus Global South. There is concern about countries in the Global South, like India, setting targets beyond 2050. The argument is that we simply don't have that kind of time. But remember, the first crucial part is that the burden of the bulk of the climate crisis actually falls on the global north, so the Americas, the Europe, etc. Many developing countries like India have basic needs that are yet to be met for a large percentage of their population. The second thing to remember is that it requires a lot of money to change existing power stations, build new renewable energy infrastructure, or buy or build that very expensive carbon capture technology that I spoke about earlier in the video. The third thing is developing countries are asking developed countries to support them financially because they have contributed less to global warming. Now, not all developed countries are actually ready to do so. Most of them are offering what are called climate loans that need to be paid back. The fourth thing to remember, that there are lots of things politicians have to think about which scientists simply don't. Planting a lot of trees requires water, which could be a problem for areas where water is scarce. Net zero is an important goal, but there are challenges and a big picture, those least responsible bearing the brunt for essentially historical excesses that have been committed against them. I'll take you through all of these concepts in more detail in the coming episodes. As always, if you've been watching, thank you very much for your time.